Ning Qi has become the female supporting character in the hottest manga of the moment, the Mad Critic Queen. She is very beautiful, but she is crazy. In order to enter the palace and kill his half-sister, he buried her under the peach blossom tree and looked at King Jing with a joyful expression, saying, "You said you like her, open your eyes and take a look." "Oh, can't you see?" The stunning woman smiled brightly, as if admiring some unparalleled masterpiece. Hegemony surpasses the Empress Dowager above the 6 palaces, which the world despises and fears. After wearing it, Ning Qi shrank his head and became a human, but Zhao Zongheng frowned and said, "How do I feel?" That the Empress is even more seriously ill. Everyone in the court and the public talks about the Emperor's lack of desire for women, and the fact that the Emperor and Empress exist in name is like a stranger, hoping that the Emperor will depose them day by day. But looking forward to it, I heard today that the Emperor went to the Fenyi Palace for a meal, and tomorrow I heard that the Emperor and the Empress are walking hand in hand in the garden, and later, the Emperor hasn't gone to court today. It's been 3 days. I can't go up. Eating soft food instead of hard food, criticizing Empress X crazily for being weak and pitiful dogs without realizing the Emperor won. Shuangjie, 1v1, Palace Do, Empress Dowagers in the Empress Dowager are virtually non-existent too. On the first day the female lead wore it, the Emperor knew that the Empress had been replaced, but she was too lazy to expose it. 3. The Emperor is the white moonlight male supporting the female lead in the original work, and the two of them have no emotional connection in the original work. 4. There is no historical investigation in the sky. Please do not enter if you mind keywords of the novel. When the Mad Empress takes the HE script and goes crazy, there is no pop-up window. When the Mad Empress takes the HE script and goes crazy, she goes crazy. Download the complete text. When the Mad Empress takes the HE script and goes crazy, she goes crazy. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1, Let Me Do It. I Can Do It. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1, Let Me Do It. I Can Do It. The lingering sound echoed through the beams, and the sound of etiquette, music, silk, and bamboo could not be stopped. Above the luxurious and magnificent palace, the woman lying on the phoenix bed slowly opened her eyes, her beautiful eyes streaming around, and there seemed to be a hint of confusion in her eyes. Ning Qi stared at the antique glazed golden roof for a long time, then leaned down and saw her lying on the phoenix couch, with a wine cup rolling down to the ground. The sound of broken celadone cups abruptly stopped the music in the palace. The musician panicked and knelt in front of the hall, while the dancers in the hall were all prostrate on the ground, and no one dared to speak. The hall fell into silence, and the eunuch standing respectfully with his head bowed quickly stepped forward, calling out in a somewhat nervous and respectful voice, "Empress." Ning Qi seemed to have never heard of it before. He sat up with his arms propped up, his slender fingers running over his dress. The touch of the silk was so real and tangible. Looking down, he could still see the golden thread embroidered on the hem of the dress with a phoenix spreading its wings and ready to fly. She took a deep breath of air and tightened her grip on her sleeve. Before she could even ask a question, she heard a noisy noise coming from outside the hall. "Get out of the way. I want to see the queen." With a shout, the palace gate was pushed open. The man who stormed in anger was dressed in a lotus blue brocade robe, with a cloud-patterned belt around his waist and a jade crown, hair tied, eyebrows and eyes full of elegance. "Empress, I really can't stop King Jing." The eunuch who fell to the ground with a thud almost covered his face and cried, as if his head was already out of control. "Just after the funeral of Au, you started playing music, singing and dancing." King Jing looked around the hall and saw that the music and dancing equipment of the master was immediately stirring up anger. His beautiful phoenix eyes stared straight at Ning Qi and said, "How long will you be deceiving me? Au, is it really you who killed me? The frames and scenes in front of me are so familiar that they completely replicate the scenes in the comic." Her favorite wife's manga went viral on the internet, but it also attracted a lot of criticism. Among them, there were many controversies about the character of the queen in the manga. Some people followed their facial features and kowtowed their heads, while others despised the queen's actions and made dark and vicious insults. Ning-chi empathized with her, perhaps due to the unexpected same name that made her feel too deeply immersed. Who could have thought of can this thing of empathy still allow people to travel through time? Ning-chi's mind was drowsy, and King Jing was still questioning tirelessly in his ear, "Ayu is your sister. How could you be so ruthless? Hello noisy." Ning-chi couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the questioning. She looked up at King Jing with a hint of anticipation. As the second male character in the manga, King Jing Gao Han-chi was also quite popular. Gao Han-chi, a descendant of the Gao family in Sichuan, rebelled during the gap between the death of the previous emperor and the enthronement of the new emperor. Among them, all 8 kings died, leaving only the Gao family. After the new emperor ascended the throne, he was granted the title Jing, becoming the only foreign clan king in the Tianqing kingdom to stay in the capital and hold significant power. The status of the Gao family was also elevated. Gao Han-chi's father died after the 9 Kings Rebellion, and his old injuries recurred. Gao Han-chi was considered to have been blessed by his ancestors, and the Gao family earned him today's honor with their blood. The ancestors of the Gao family had a good relationship with the Si family. Although they had not made any marriage arrangements, almost everyone in the Gao and Si families believed that in the future, King Jing would definitely marry the only legitimate daughter of the Si family, Ning-chi. Unfortunately, after looking at Gao Han-chi for a long time, Ning-chi spoke slowly and said, "The life and death of the daughter of the Si family have nothing to do with you. Mind your own business." Anning. Gao Han-chi took a step forward as if he was about to argue with him. The palace attendant next to the Xining pond looked cold and solemn. "Prince Jing, be cautious. The Empress's maiden name is not something you can call it. The forbidden area of the harem, even if you are a prince, you cannot break into the palace of the Empress. If someone comes, see off the King Jing." The nearby attendants quickly stepped forward and blocked Gao Han-chi's way, no longer letting him get closer. Gao Han-chi looked up at the woman in a high position with disappointment and said, "For the sake of the queen's position, you have become like this. You are no longer the sister of Anning in my mind." After finishing speaking, Gao Han-chi turned around and brushed his sleeves before leaving, with a look of great disappointment and resentment. Ning-chi. This person seems to have some serious illness. I didn't poke your eyes, the plot has already collapsed, be content with you. In this episode of the manga in the original work, the Empress personally dug out Gao Han-chi's eyes and said, "You can only have me in your eyes." The crazy criticism of character design is vividly portrayed. Sitting on the phoenix couch with his forehead propped up, Ning-chi never expected that such an outrageous thing as time travel would fall on him. He even dressed up as the most controversial supporting actress in the entire manga, the Empress Dowager of Tianqing Kingdom's hegemonic 6 palaces. The emperor, holding the imperial edict of the late emperor, issued an edict to seal the Empress Dowager and welcomed her into the palace with the courtesy of the central palace. However, she has only been in the palace for more than 3 months now. And this queen should not have been hers. No one expected that the emperor's intention was to confer the title of queen. I thought it was just sending my daughter to the palace as a concubine. Many years ago, Lord Shiwu prepared to send his illegitimate daughter, Simuyu, to the palace for the use of the Si family. Since childhood, Simuyu had no fun and was trapped in the palace, learning palace rules and etiquette, playing music, chess, calligraphy, painting, and scheming, all in order to become the most perfect chess piece for the Si family when he entered the palace. Simuyu died, at the hands of Ning-chi. She personally killed her sister just to enter the palace. As soon as he put it on, Ning-chi, who was carrying his life, choked up and said, "What's going on here? Madam, calm down. If the palace guards are not strict enough, I will be punished severely." The eunuch standing next to her with his head hanging down took a step forward and respectfully said, "Look at this song. Do you still listen to it?" "I won't listen." Si Ningqi glanced up. The eunuch was Su Yongda, the eunuch who served beside Si Ningqi, and the slightly older woman next to her, Su Yun, was her maid who brought her into the palace. In the original work, these two people followed Si Ningqi to death, but she was deposed and they were not spared. Being deposed and sentenced to death, Shi Ningqi shook her small body. The Empress Dowager's methods were ruthless, and she almost sickly did not allow anyone to touch her things. Even as an empress, she had never had any responsibility as an empress. She had close contact with King Jing, and the entire harem was under her control, as if for pleasure. The ending of the manga was that everyone died in her hands, even the emperor was killed by her, and she only wanted to get some love and affection from King Jing's side, but unfortunately, she did not achieve her wish until her death. Beauty, snake, and scorpion are just like that. Shi Ningqi still remembers how he howled under his wife's Weibo account. "You even killed the emperor, why don't you just become the emperor yourself? Why did you commit suicide? Let me do it, I can do it. And now? Help. How can this thing still be effective?" Si Ningqi was holding his trembling little heart and wanted to cry. While his thoughts were in turmoil, he suddenly heard a call outside the palace. "The emperor has arrived." To avoid anyone not finishing the introduction, repeat it again. Eating soft food instead of hard food, criticizing Empress X crazily for being weak and pitiful dogs without realizing the emperor won. Shuangjie, 1v1, Palace Do, Empress Dowagers in the Empress Dowager are virtually non-existent too. On the first day the female lead wore it, the emperor knew that the empress had been replaced, but she was too lazy to expose it. 3. The emperor is the white moonlight male supporting the female lead in the original work, and the two of them have no emotional connection in the original work. 4. There is no historical research in the sky, please do not enter if you mind. Here's a brand new story. Everyone has their own preferences and doesn't insist. If you don't like it, please remove the bookshelf. If you insist on stepping on it before leaving, I will delete the review. Thank you. End of this chapter. Isn't chapter 2 just about cooking a meal? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Isn't chapter 2 just about cooking a meal? Shi Ningqi felt a chill in his heart and quickly got up to greet him. Under the reflection of the afterglow, she lifted her eyes slightly and saw the man who had stepped into the palace. He was tall and cold, dressed in a dark patterned dragon robe, with ink hair and a crown that appeared somewhat meticulous. In the manga, he was the most revered emperor. He suddenly appeared in front of him, his handsome face and thin lips lightly pursed, with a faint and cold expression between his eyebrows. His slender eyes implied a fierce expression, and his calm gaze seemed to not ripple anything. The young emperor looked down at her from a high position, his eyes cold and indifferent, as if the person in front of him was just an inconspicuous object. Free of charge. A calm tone sounded, and Zhao Zongheng withdrew his gaze and walked straight to the main seat to take his seat. Shi Ningqi turned around in a daze and looked at the man sitting in a high position, involuntarily holding his breath. He was like a born emperor, and there was no discord in him. He sat there, making people want to bend their knees and submit. Zhao Zongheng spoke as if it were a routine, "I'm busy today and can't accompany the empress to dinner." Shi Ningqi blinked for a moment, not knowing why. Next to him, Su Yun whispered to Shi Ningqi, "Madam, today is the 15th day. In terms of etiquette, the emperor would go to the empress's palace on the 1st and 15th days of the Lunar New Year." "It's okay, you're busy," Shi Ningqi quickly said with a smile, and as the words fell, Su Yun, Su Yongda, and others beside him were almost staring out of their eyes, trembling with fear as they looked at the empress who spoke so casually. The emperor's gaze, sitting in a high position, swept over her for the first time, staring so seriously at her, as if looking at a stranger he had never met before, with no fluctuation in his expression. The grain transportation around the village cannot be given to the Xi family, Zhao Zongheng said with a faint expression. What is it? Xi Ningqi pondered for a moment before remembering that the matter of grain transportation had been a topic of debate in the court these days. Everyone wanted to take over this fat difference, and the Xi family was no exception. Zhao Zongheng thought he was negotiating terms with him. Then I won't give it, said Xi Ningqi with a nonchalant expression, which scared the people listening next to him, Su Yun and Su Yongda, and kept secretly looking at the Empress. Okay. Zhao Zongheng didn't say a word of nonsense and stood up, intending to leave. Xi Ningqi looked at Zhao Zongheng and suddenly spoke up as if he had thought of something. In 3 days, will the emperor come to pray for rain and blessings? Zhao Zongheng paused in his footsteps and looked at her slowly. That posture seemed like Xi Ningqi was a stranger, making a very abrupt request. After several months of entering the palace, the two of them could count the number of times they met, and even when they met, they did not interfere with each other. They were all nominal empresses, as if they were just doing their official duties. This is my first time praying for rain and blessings, to avoid making mistakes and losing the face of the emperor. Xi Ningqi blinked and looked at Zhao Zongheng, his casual words seemed to be like that. Zhao Zongheng lowered his eyes and responded with a moderate tone, turning around and walking away, his expression showing no signs of joy or anger. The emperor came and walked quickly, and Xi Ningqi breathed a sigh of relief as she looked at the reopened palace door. She took the initiative to say that the rain-praying ceremony was not because of anything else, but because something had happened on top of the original Zhongjian ceremony. Someone planned to make her bear a demon and curse. Xi Ningqi doesn't want to follow the old path of being surrounded by enemies from the original owner. Let's just be an honest person. What if the plot completely collapses and the character collapses, then she will go back. Hey, I'm tired. Xi Ningqi turned around and sat down on the phoenix couch, feeling very eager to lie down. Do you want me to pass on the meal? Suyun suppressed her nervousness and quickly approached Xi Ningqi with a tired expression, asking in a low voice. Pass it on. Ningqi, who was about to lie down just now, suddenly regained his energy. Speaking of dry food, I'm not tired anymore. The meals prepared by the pantry were delivered quickly, but the Empress's meals couldn't have been more delicate. Unable to wait, Xi Ningqi followed the palace people to the dining table, staring blankly at the dazzling array of food on the table. It looks too exquisite. Before Su Yun could come forward to prepare the dishes, Xi Ningqi had already picked up his chopsticks on his own. Su Yun and Su Yongda, who were preparing to serve next to him, looked at each other for a moment and then stood beside him with their heads down. Xi Ningqi couldn't wait to pick up the dishes and put them in his mouth. She frowned and swallowed, so bland a very light and refreshing taste, not particularly delicious, just light. The dishes on the table were not spicy at all, and there was very little oil and salt added, even some were not. They only had a fresh and fragrant taste, and after taking a few bites of the Xining pool, they couldn't put down their chopsticks. She is the ancestor of spicy food. This table of dishes may seem extremely nutritious and well-balanced, but where is the kitchen? Xi Ningqi put down his chopsticks and turned to ask Su Yun. Is today's food not to the lady's taste? Su Yun's face changed slightly and she quickly said, I will immediately send the servant from the Imperial kitchen to ask questions. Hey. Ningqi grabbed Su Yun and said, it's just that this dish is too light. Do you have any spicy dishes? Su Yun was very surprised when she heard this. She had been serving Xi Ningqi for many years and had never seen her like spicy flavors. Why did her taste suddenly change? Su Yun was suspicious in her heart, but dared not ask any more questions. She quickly ordered someone to prepare a new meal. In the end, the meal that was sent did indeed contain chili peppers, but only 3 or 2 chili peppers were not enough for the meal. Xi Ningqi was almost starving and dizzy. I couldn't help but head straight to the dining room, which alarmed many people. The Empress is going to cook herself. The steward of the Imperial kitchen's face turned pale with fear, thinking that the Empress was here to ask for justice. Unexpectedly, she was going to cook herself. How can this be done? Empress Jin Ji Yi can't do such rough work. Empress Feng has a noble physique, but it's absolutely impossible. Su Yongda and others hurriedly blocked her, saying nothing to let her personally do it. Xining Qi. Can't we just make a meal? She looked down at the kneeling eunuch and palace maid, and had no choice but to compromise and stand on the side to guide the imperial chef to take action. Everyone didn't know which incident the Empress had caused, but they still obediently followed suit. And what Saninki needs to do is nothing else, it's just a simple dish, boiled meat slices in water. She proficiently commanded the imperial chef on how to cook, and within a moment, the spicy taste had already spread out. For a moment, the people standing in the kitchen with their heads hanging down were all probing their heads, but they dared not approach and take a closer look. I have never seen such a method before, and the chef who cooks it swallows saliva when he smells the spicy flavor. Empress, forgive me for being impolite. I wonder who made this recipe, the imperial chef boldly asked. Ah. Someone else taught me. Xining Qi murmured and happily returned to the palace, holding his own boiled meat slices. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. We're going to cut her. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 4. Imperial Concubine Regulations and Training. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. Undercurrent Surging. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Undercurrent Surging. The state of Cheng has long been lost, and all its land has been divided and annexed by various countries. Xining Qi casually said that he never expected the jade seal of Qinghua to actually be there. Zhao Zongheng finished eating and drinking before leaving, his eyes seeming to be saying, "Let's have some more food." Xining Qi took the opportunity to request the private establishment of a small kitchen in Fenwu Palace, and Zhao Zongheng agreed without any surprise. However, shortly after, the imperial chef came to visit the Empress. It was none other than the chef in the imperial kitchen who helped Xining Qi cook water-boiled meat slices. Wu Sanqi, the servant, pays his respects to the Empress. Wu Sanqi bowed and kowtowed, feeling very excited and delighted. He heard that the Empress wanted someone in front of him, but it was only because of the bowl of boiled meat that shocked him. The official in the imperial dining room advised that this Empress is not easy to get along with, and be careful not to offend the Empress if there is a slight mistake. She will never return. Wu Sanqi couldn't bear to listen to the advice. He had always dreamed of the recipe for that dish, and now that there was such a good opportunity, he didn't want to let it go. He came rushing and roaring. Upon entering the gate of Fenwu Palace, "There are people from this palace." Xining Qi curved his lips and looked at Wu Sanqi, saying, "Mind your own mouth. Whatever you say can be said outside, and what you cannot say can be carefully considered in your heart. Su Yongda, take him down." Xining Qi lazily waved his hand. The only benefit of wearing it over is that there is no need for any means of imposing authority. Everyone in this palace is afraid of her and does not dare to act recklessly. Wu Sanqi couldn't help but understand, and his heart was filled with a respectful response. The Emperor's repeated visits to Fenwu Palace have surprised everyone in the palace. Today, Empress Rong's punishment is even more shocking. In Yuan Palace, Empress Rong smashed a high-quality jade bottle and almost gritted her teeth, saying, "Yesterday I heard that she intercepted the invitation of Empress Xian." It was surprising to ask the Emperor to take a detour to Fenwu Palace. "I didn't expect that today she would attract the Emperor to stand up for her." She was punished for copying scriptures. Although there were no extremely sacred concubines in this palace, her talent and beauty were both favored in this palace, and the emperor never easily brushed her face. "Empress, calm down." The palace maid beside her quickly approached and comforted. "Empress is actually the master of the 6 palaces. It is only right for the emperor to show some kindness. Isn't a queen's position enough?" Empress Rong raised her voice and tightened her handkerchief, saying, "Just because she is the daughter of the Sea family, she can enter the main palace." Her Sea family? Why? Consort Rong's eyes were filled with resentment. Many years ago, the Empress Dowager even advised the Empress Dowager to establish a empress. Although her intention was to ascend to the throne as a concubine in the harem, she devoted herself wholeheartedly to serving the emperor. She had already reached this point. Only when the Empress Dowager opened her golden mouth, she would surely be able to ascend to the throne. But why did a shining pool appear out of thin air? Danju hurriedly grabbed Rongfei's sleeve and nervously glanced at no one outside the palace, saying, "Madam, be cautious. The posthumous decree of the Empress Dowager is a testament from the late emperor, and even the Empress Dowager cannot easily disobey it." Danju said solemnly, "Now that the Empress has been appointed, it's too late to say anything. The Empress Dowager must not act recklessly. The position of the Marquis of Western Martial Arts in the court is not low. How could this palace not know?" Empress Rong listened to these words, her emotions slightly calmed down, but her gaze remained cold. "So what about the Empress? As long as you can win the Emperor's holy heart, it's more important than anything else." Rongfei closed her eyes and clenched her fist. She would never give in so easily. The Yuan Palace is unstable, and the Yuning Palace is also not peaceful. Consort De coughed under her throat, and the palace attendants next to her hurriedly served her tea and water. Her eyes were filled with heartache and she said, "Your Majesty is so sick, why go to the central palace to pay her respects today?" Empress Dowager pinched her handkerchief and touched her lips. Upon hearing these words, she smiled lightly and said, "If you don't go today, how can you see such a big play? The Empress is also too domineering. The palace has always been harmonious. If the Empress is seriously ill and asks the Emperor to come and see her, it's not even possible. It's really..." Red Peach pursed her lips and frowned, looking very unhappy. Cough. Consort De couldn't help but laugh out loud. She had a grudge in her heart, but the thought of Rongfei being demoted by the Emperor in Fenwu Palace made her laugh. She couldn't stand Rongfei's demeanor the most. The imperial concubines in this harem have never had a partial preference, but Empress Rong claims to be favored and comes from the Prime Minister's mansion as if she is superior, accustomed to coaxing the Empress Dowager. She did not hold any position in the position of the 4 concubines, but relied on the dignity of the Empress Dowager to ignore her. It is gratifying to see Consort Rong punished in front of the Emperor today. Send someone to the Seizen Bureau to tell us that Empress Rong is the worst at not being meticulous in her work. Empress De curved her lips and smiled lightly. "Let Jenny search carefully. If you haven't completely copied the scriptures, you'll have to take them over and have Empress Rong carefully review and rewrite them. After all, this is the Emperor's will." The smile on Concubine De's lips increased, and the Red Peach immediately showed a clear expression upon hearing this. She quickly bent down and agreed. The underground currents surging in the palace have not yet been noticed by Xining Pond. Because, the Empress Dowager summoned. Before even Xining Qi could lie down, someone arrived at the Xian Palace. Perhaps it's for tomorrow's rain ceremony. Su Yun was also puzzled and thought for a moment before whispering. Xian Palace is not as simple as Fenwu Palace, it is simply more luxurious, and it doesn't seem like a residence for the Empress Dowager at all. The current Empress Dowager Cui is not the Emperor's biological mother or adoptive mother, but just a stepmother. There is no relationship between mother and son, and it is even rumored that the Emperor's biological mother's illness was mostly caused by Cui. This woman is accustomed to acting and has not shown any flaws to this day. The emperor didn't even disguise his displeasure towards the Empress Dowager at all. He never came to pay her respects, let alone offer the kind of condolences that should be given during festivals and holidays. However, the emperor was satisfied with taking care of the Empress Dowager's daily life, which led to such a magnificent Xian palace. My concubine pays her respects to the Empress Dowager. Xi Ningqi bowed his head and raised his eyes slightly to see the young woman sitting on the main throne, dressed in luxurious clothes and makeup. This is the Empress Dowager of Tianqing Kingdom, probably under 30 years old. Empress Dowager Cui raised her eyes and looked at Xi Ningqi, her face inevitably showing a hint of jealousy in her eyes. You really look like that woman. Empress Dowager Cui withdrew her gaze and casually said, I have heard that today the emperor has rewarded the empress with the emerald and glazed pearl. Xi Ningqi. Just a broken bead, why do you repeatedly take it out and say it? Yes, I saw that it looked good, so I ordered someone to take it to get the phoenix crown. Xi Ningqi curved his lips and looked at Empress Dowager Cui, saying, Does Empress Dowager like it? So I. The AI family is not even willing to snatch things from you. Empress Dowager Cui's face was hidden in displeasure, and her eyes also showed a hint of anger, as if she was very unhappy with Xi Ningqi's lack of interest. Her lips were tightly fixed on Xi Ningqi and she said, I just didn't expect that the emperor would reward you with the precious pearl. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. A good move to embrace and embrace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. A good move to embrace and embrace. Has the Empress gone to the Xian Palace? The man sitting in front of the dragon table in the Xianming Palace frowned and looked up. Yes, Wang Qingxiang stole a glance at the emperor's expression and said in a very careful tone, I've been there for a while, Emperor. Look. If it had been in the past, he would not have been told by the emperor about this matter. But now, thinking about the emperor's recent act of rewarding the empress and standing up for her, although he cannot fully understand the divine will, his intuition of serving the emperor for many years makes him feel that this matter needs to be reported. Zhao Zongheng's hand holding the red pen paused slightly, and he didn't speak for a while. Just when Wang Qingxiang thought the emperor had nothing to say, he suddenly heard the emperor's deep voice coming from above. Tonight, go to Fengwu Palace. Wang Qingxiang's expression tightened and he almost instantly understood the emperor's meaning. He quickly lowered his eyes and respectfully responded, yes. Turning around and leaving the palace, he tirelessly sent someone to the Xian Palace to invite the empress. Although the emperor did not explicitly state it, Wang Qingxiang understood his intention to invite the empress back. The emperor did not want to personally set foot in the Xian Palace. Before Xi Ningqi could say a few words to the Empress Dowager, the people in front of the emperor arrived and said they were going to Fengwu Palace to invite the Empress Dowager to prepare early. Empress Cui looked particularly ugly, but could not say anything and could only watch helplessly as the empress was asked to leave by the emperor's people. It's really rare, Empress Dowager Cui chuckled with a sharp voice. It's not common to see an emperor with so many things to do. Now that the empress has been established, she is very concerned about this empress. Empress Dowager, from the perspective of a servant, perhaps the emperor has been relying on the Western Martial Marquis a lot lately, whispered the nearby servant. The emperor has always been like this. After careful consideration, Empress Dowager Cui narrowed her eyes and smiled for a moment, and said in a flat voice, the young master of the Xi family has only recently returned from the battlefield and lost his legs for the sake of Tianqing. Empress Dowager Cui played with her fingers and said with a smile, I heard that the eldest son of the Xi family is the elder brother of the empress's mother. It is understandable that the emperor is protecting the empress like this now. No wonder even the jade and glass beads were given to her. Thinking about this, Empress Dowager Cui smiled a bit and waved her hand, saying, well, I want to see what this empress has. Xi Ningqi inexplicably returned to Fengwu Palace, where the emperor was already preparing to dine. He had two similar meals that seemed a bit greasy, so he turned to the small kitchen and today he made 2 fried lamb chops and fried egg buns. The biggest advantage of being in this palace is that there is no need to worry about ingredients. There is a garden bureau in charge of planting, and there are all kinds of vegetables, fruits, and vegetables available. The ingredients used by the Emperor and Empress are all carefully selected and sent. Wu Sanxi was extremely talented, and in just a few words, she was able to comprehend the oral steps of Xining Qi, which saved her a lot of trouble. In the past, the style of imperial meals prepared by emperors was so complex that they couldn't fit a table. Today, they are so light and simple. When the emperor arrives, we'll set up the meal. Xiningqi ordered Su Yongda and turned to the inner hall to change into luxurious clothes and dresses. Su Yun was quite puzzled. Which palace concubine heard that the emperor was coming, but she didn't dress up carefully. The empress, on the other hand, took off her luxurious attire and jewelry. Being so simple may have lost her status. However, Xiningqi couldn't manage so much anymore. With her heavy phoenix crown and layers of clothing binding her, she couldn't breathe and couldn't wait to replace it. Zhao Zongheng lifted his foot and entered the Fengwu Palace. His expression was light, and there was a hint of impatience between his eyebrows. His deep gaze made Su Yongda and others who were waiting jump in their hearts. They secretly speculated that the emperor's face was so ugly, perhaps something had happened. With this hesitation, Su Yongda walked slowly into the inner hall, and in the blink of an eye, Zhao Zongheng had already entered the inner hall. He was about to ask the empress why she had not come out to greet him, but when he turned his head, he saw the graceful figure behind the purple veil screen. Zhao Zongheng's footsteps suddenly stopped, and Wang Qingxiang, who was following behind, also stopped. He glanced at the emperor's gaze, as if thinking of something, and bent down 90 degrees to look at the ground, bowing carefully and exiting. Su Yun, haven't we found the satin dress for this palace yet? In Xiningqi's tone, there was a hint of displeasure as he casually wrapped himself in a thin gauze skirt and twisted out from behind the screen, loosely draped over his body. The slender waist swayed, and under the thin veil, the long legs could be clearly seen stepping out. The fair skin seemed to have a soft pearl-like glow, the perky chest was so proud, and the phoenix eyes lifted with a hint of coldness. Zhao Zongheng has heard many words praising people's appearance, and there are also many words about the queen's graceful demeanor that no one can match. He had never heard it before, his expression was dull and he never responded. But today, your majesty. Xiningqi Feng's eyes flickered with surprise, feeling a moment of panic. Cough, Zhao Zongheng lowered his head and glanced sideways, I'll wait outside. Just now, Wang Qingxiang, who was still daydreaming happily, saw the emperor also withdraw in the blink of an eye, and his old face collapsed in an instant. What a great opportunity! How did you return it? Xiningqi looked embarrassed and waited for Su Yun to quickly tidy up the satin skirt before coming out to see the driver. Watching the sun setting, why did the emperor come so early? Emperor, forgive me, I have lost my dignity. Xiningqi took a step forward and bowed to Zhao Zongheng. No problem. Zhao Zongheng's tone was cold and he didn't hear anything unusual. Xiningqi turned his head and asked someone to pass the meal. When he sat down, he heard Zhao Zongheng say, Today, the Empress Dowager summoned me. Is there any trouble for you? Xiningqi looked at him and shook his head, then heard him say, The Empress Dowager, there's no need for you to go and be filial. Zhao Zongheng spoke calmly and coldly, even when he said the word Empress Dowager, with a hint of coldness. The relationship between the Emperor and the Empress Dowager seemed much worse than imagined. The novel diet made Zhao Zongheng eat exceptionally enjoyable, even a bit overwhelming. And then, so, that's the Emperor. The Emperor and Empress walked quietly in the Imperial garden, one in front and one behind, a slightly distant distance. It was supposed to be such a peaceful scene, but when Xining Pond saw the green leaves, the figure hiding slightly raised his eyebrows. Before Xiningqi could even think about who those women were, he suddenly heard a cry in his ear. A figure hidden behind the leaves stumbled out and rushed towards Zhao Zongheng. What a great move to embrace and embrace. The purpose was very clear, but what surprised people was that Zhao Zongheng seemed to have noticed it before. With a wrong step, the beauty pounced in the air and screamed in surprise. Xi Ningqi watched helplessly as the delicate beauty lay on the gravel road, nodding her head firmly. Xi Ningqi said, "There's no need to perform this great gift. At the beginning. How does the Empress look?" Zhao Zongheng said, "It's okay." Later on, Zhao Zongheng said, "Ice flesh and jade bones, sinking to death." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. His Palm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. His Palm Puff. Behind him, Su Yongda and the other attendants witnessed such a dramatic scene and almost burst out laughing uncontrollably. "Who is so reckless? How dare you rush into the Emperor and the Empress?" Su Yun protected Xi Ningqi and looked down at the woman lying on the ground with a cold glance, looking at her attire that did not resemble that of a palace maid. "Emperor, please forgive me. I was careless for a moment." The woman reacted quickly enough, with a painful grin that could reveal this pitiful posture in the next second. The speed at which she changed her face amazed Xi Ningqi. Zhao Zongheng stood on the side, looking at her with a warm expression, his eyes indifferent and completely indifferent. "Xi Ningqi, big brother. This is for you." Most likely, she was too silent, and the delicate and helpless expression on the woman's face couldn't be held back. She boldly looked up at Zhao Zongheng, her face tinged with thin red and a shy expression. If she is neither a female official nor a palace maid, then she can only be the last to pick a daughter. A beauty personally selected by the Grand Commandant, who was just sent to the palace a month ago. "What's your name?" Xi Ningqi lowered his eyes and asked the woman in front of him in a low voice. "My servant's surname is Qiu, and my single name is Ji." Qiu Jiru responded in a soft voice, with a hint of coquettishness in her speech. Xi Ningqi widened his eyes and vaguely remembered in the manga that the emperor was very fond of a beautiful concubine. In just a few months, a young bride was crowned as a concubine, and in the end, she became the only noble concubine in Tianqin Kingdom. At that time, everyone was discussing that this noblewoman was most likely to give birth to an heir. Unfortunately, he ultimately died in the hands of the queen. "Ah, that's a really nice name." Xi Ningqi smiled and looked up at Zhao Zongheng, gently bending his eyebrows. "Don't you like it, Emperor?" With a hint of laughter, her glass-like eyes seemed to contain a surging color. She blinked her eyes and watched him smile, inexplicably spreading a strange and dangerous aura. Zhao Zongheng's gaze was fixed on Xi Ningqi for a moment, and his gentle gaze seemed to have a hint of voyeurism. Upon hearing such a question, Qiu Ji couldn't help but turn her gaze to the young emperor, who she fell in love with at first sight. Her eyes were filled with anticipation, and there was a hint of pride in them. She seemed to be particularly confident in her appearance. "I don't like it," Zhao Zongheng lowered his eyes and said in a cool tone, "It's too ugly." "Oh, what a pity," Xi Ningqi looked at Qiu Ji with a regretful expression on his face. "How could it be that the emperor doesn't like you?" "Why not?" Xi Ningqi's gaze turned and he casually pointed to a eunuch. "Why don't we give it to you?" "What?" Qiu Ji was shocked and looked up at Xi Ningqi in fear. She then turned to Zhao Zongheng and cried, "Your Majesty, please spare your life. I understand my mistake. I am the emperor's adopted daughter, how can I reward a eunuch at will? She is going to enter the palace as a concubine, she is going to be the emperor's woman." Qiu Ji knelt and crawled to Zhao Zongheng's feet. Before she could reach out and grab the corner of his robe, she saw him take a step away, and her tone rang out without any ups and downs. "Accurate. With just one word, she was sentenced to death." Zhao Zongheng seemed to have no patience to listen to the noisy cries, so he lifted his foot and left. Wang Qingxiang waved his hand and the attendant behind him quickly came forward to hold down Qiu Ji, covering her mouth tightly. To avoid her crying and causing displeasure to the emperor, Shi Ningqi fell behind half a step and looked at the frightened woman who had been pinned to the ground, causing a wicked smile. Not far away, Zhao Zongheng returned to the Xianming Hall to handle government affairs, while Shi Ningqi also wobbled back to the palace, and the news of the girl picking quietly spread. Rewarded a eunuch, it's ridiculous, it's the emperor's woman. That eunuch is not a small eunuch, how simple would it be to be able to follow the emperor's side? That is the disciple brought out by Wang Qingxiang, who will take over his class in the future. Don't look down on eunuchs in this palace. Renowned eunuchs like Wang Qingxiang are flattered by countless people in this palace. Luo Jin is a very discerning person. Otherwise, how could he be appreciated by Wang Qingxiang and accepted as his disciple? If Qiu Ji had been honest with him, perhaps life would have been much more comfortable than being a prostitute. Unfortunately, ambitious people are never peaceful. On the day of praying for rain and blessings, Shi Ningpon got up early. Today is a major event in Tianqin country. The Xingtang generation suffered from severe drought year after year, and the harvest of crops decreased year by year. The court has debated this matter countless times. I don't know who put forward the rain prayer, but after circling around, the heavy burden was placed on the new queen. In fact, it was simply a conspiracy. Marquis Shiwu made many enemies in the court, and now the daughter of the Xi family has become the empress. Those who want to harm the Xi family are even more difficult to exert their influence. Therefore, they decided to plan on the head of Shi Ningqi to give her the name of a demon queen. Empress, is the emperor really back today? Su Yun couldn't help but feel nervous while helping Shi Ningqi dress up. If he doesn't come, let him spit out everything he eats. Dog man. When Ningqi stepped out of the palace, the imperial concubines of the rear palace had been waiting in front of the palace gate, and all eyes were focused on Ningqi. The lady in the phoenix robe and the phoenix crown was elegant, and the eyeliner raised by the phoenix eyes seemed to be a bit supercilious. She was incredibly beautiful, elegant and charming, with a cold and alluring aura. Her red lips lightly pursed and her casual gaze made the concubines tremble in their hearts. In a daze, a timid heart emerged, how could they dare to compete with her? Everyone has been waiting for a long time, let's go. Sitting on the phoenix chariot with a slightly lazy appearance, Shi Ningqi was still tired and headed towards the Zhangtai Hall. The altar outside the Zhangtai Hall has already been prepared, only waiting for the auspicious time to arrive. Upon seeing the arrival of the Empress, Si Zanju Jiani quickly stepped forward to pay her respects and respectfully spoke of praying for rain and blessings. Si Ningqi had already reviewed many times, but at this moment, as she watched the courtiers arriving one after another to observe the ceremony, the gathered heads still made her feel immense pressure. Empress, the auspicious time is almost here. Si Zanju Jiani respectfully stepped forward and said, please move on, Empress. The Emperor has arrived, shouted loudly, and everyone in the room lit up their eyes, showing a hint of surprise. Encountering something, I'm a bit late. Zhao Zongheng didn't care about anyone and walked straight to the side of Si Ningqi, whispering in a low voice. Then, he reached out his hand to Si Ningqi with ease. With just a bow of his head, she could see Zhao Zongheng's slender fingers and clear patterns in his palm. It's not too late, the Emperor has just arrived. Shi Ningqi smiled and put his hand into his palm. Her warm palm held her hand and walked towards the altar without looking at it. The scene of the Emperor and Empress taking the stage together disturbed the thoughts of many people. The female lead is not a good person or a bad person, otherwise she wouldn't empathize with a crazy critic and mind leaving quickly. Please do not elevate the author's personal values in character setting, and do not incorporate ancient feudal systems into modern social cognition. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. A Pearl. You are listening at novel full.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 9, I'll give him 2 punches. You are listening at novel full.audio. Chapter 9, I'll give him 2 punches. Suyun's heart trembled as she was about to kneel and kowtow when she saw the slender fingers lifting the silent majesty, making her instantly silent and unable to speak. The brocade boots stained with water vapor walked past her, and Suyun lowered her head and was full of thoughts about the drunken empress lying on the phoenix bed. If the emperor had seen the rude and unrestrained appearance of the empress, the name of the virtuous empress she had just obtained might not have been preserved. Suyun had a desire to speak, but she couldn't say much as she glanced at the emperor's deep gaze. It's already 3 o'clock at night now, and the emperor has never come to the harem at such a time. Is it? Suyun's eyes lit up slightly as she watched the emperor step into the palace gate, and suddenly felt that the empress's drunkenness seemed not a bad thing. There was a tempting aroma of wine floating indoors, mixed with the unique body fragrance of women. Zhao Zongheng's footsteps slowed down a bit as he stepped into the hall. When he looked up, he saw the woman lying on the phoenix couch, probably feeling a bit hot from the alcohol. She stretched out her body, lifted her wide sleeves, revealing her pure white wrists. Under the flickering candlelight, her skin seemed as flawless as white jade. Shi Ningqi looked up slightly, with a hint of confusion in his eyes, and blinked at Zhao Zongheng standing at the bottom. Immediately, he curved his lips and spread his face, revealing an extremely bright smile. With a thin red seductive eyes on his face, he looked at him and called out, "Husband." The hall suddenly fell silent. Zhao Zongheng's eyes deepened inch by inch and he said, "Someone here." Wang Qingxiang crawled into the hall and saw the empress lying on the phoenix bed without any manners. She was immediately frightened and closed her eyes, lowered her head, and said respectfully, "I'm here. The empress is drunk, bring some sobering soup." Zhao Zongheng lowered his eyes calmly and said, "The servants of Fenwu Palace were not well served. If you pull them down, each one will hit 10 big boards." "Yes," Wang Qingxiang took a deep breath and quickly responded. Looking at the emperor's figure who didn't turn back and left, he silently complained, and indeed he had thought too much. What a stunning beauty, in the eyes of the emperor, is nothing but wood. Wang Qingxiang dared not look too much at the scene inside the palace. Although he only glanced briefly, he couldn't help but praise the beauty and charm of the empress. He thought that the emperor's late-night visit was aimed at the empress, but whoever thought the entire palace of Fenwu Palace has declined, and the empress's phoenix body is so exquisite and precious. Drunken and injured, it is because you palace people advise not to serve properly. This meal has been a solid one. The emperor will not punish the empress, so naturally he will punish the palace attendants. The empress dowager, who had only recently gained a virtuous reputation, also received many rewards. There were various speculations in the palace, all of which felt that the emperor's behavior was different from usual. She was pondering whether the balance that had been in place for many years in the harem was about to be disrupted. Unexpectedly, I heard today that the emperor punished the palace staff in the empress's palace, and they fought on that board all night without leaving a single one. I have a lot of skills as an empress, but that's all. Yuan Fei and Rong Fei sat at the same table in Yuan Palace, laughing happily and comfortably as the palace people talked about things outside. It just took advantage of the heavens. It happened to rain and she became famous. Empress Yuan played with the jade objects on the table, squinting her eyes and laughing. "I really thought I was something. I didn't have the ability to keep the emperor's heart. For so many years, the concubines in the palace have already figured it out. No one can expect to be favored or loved by the emperor. If anyone could receive a different treatment from the emperor, there might be a huge wave in this harem." Empress Rong took a sip of her teacup and felt as if she had suddenly found a way to vent her frustration. She squinted her eyes and smiled slightly, saying, "The Empress Dowager's birthday is approaching. We should think carefully about what gift to prepare for her. Upon hearing this, Empress Yuan was taken aback and looked at Empress Rong awkwardly, saying, "Sister, don't blame your sister for being talkative. The Emperor never organizes a birthday banquet for the Empress Dowager, and he has never come to the Xian Palace to celebrate her birthday. What's there to prepare for the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet?" Yuan Fei said, pursing her lips as if she was disdainful of Rong Fei's flattery towards the Empress Dowager. "What do you know?" Empress Rong lowered her face and stared coldly at Empress Yuan. "Anyway, she is the Empress Dowager of Tianqin Kingdom. As long as she is the Empress Dowager, we cannot neglect her for a day. So what if she's the Empress Dowager?" Empress Yuan frowned and said, "She has no authority or power, let alone any usefulness. At the beginning, she said that the candidates for the future were from the Imperial concubines, but what happened?" The Imperial concubine Yuan snorted 2 times, very dissatisfied, and said, "The Emperor the final say, and a letter of edict sealed the Shining Pool as the queen. Sister, it's better not to waste your thoughts on the Empress Dowager." Empress Yuan still tried to persuade her, but as she looked up, she saw that Empress Rong's face had become increasingly ugly. She immediately stopped speaking with insight. Some exclaimed, "So, what kind of birthday gift would be suitable for the Empress Dowager's birthday?" Consort Rong saw Consort Yuan pause and her expression softened slightly. She discussed the matter of the birthday gift with Consort Yuan. In the Fengwu Palace over there, Si Ningqi had just woken up and was drunk all night. It turned out that such a big deal had happened. The people in the Fengwu Palace were all beaten, and even Su Yun did not escape this beating. He came to serve Si Ningqi with pain and stood up. "It's the servants and others who didn't take care of her well. Madam, don't blame the Emperor." Su Yun knelt on the ground and whispered. Shi Ningqi rubbed his brow and gritted his teeth fiercely in secret, "Dog Emperor. Madam, the Emperor seemed angry yesterday. How about?" Su Yun looked at Si Ningqi and said, "Are you going to apologize to the Emperor?" "What?" Shi Ningqi looked up at Su Yun and gritted his teeth, saying, "He hit my person, do I have to go and apologize to him? I'll give him 2 punches. Su Yun. In Xianming Hall, Zhao Zongheng raised his hand and folded the music on the table. As soon as he was ready to get up, he saw Luo Jindingdangding coming in, bent down and said, "Your Majesty, the Empress has sent a meal dim sum." Zhao Zongheng hesitated slightly as he stood up, leaned back on the dragon chair and raised his eyebrows, saying, "Let her in." It was none other than Su Yongde, the eunuch next to the queen, who came in with the dim sum. Yesterday, he was hit by a board and now he is walking with pain. The servant kowtowed to the Emperor. Su Yongde bowed his knees and kowtowed, raised the dim sum dish above his head and said respectfully, "The Empress thought about the Emperor's dragon body, so she ordered the servant to send special dim sum." Zhao Zongheng waved his hand, Wang Qingxiang understood, and stepped forward to take the tray and present it to the Emperor. The dim sum placed on the tray is round and white. "I can't see what it is." There is a glass of water beside it, which is full of sour and sweet fruit fragrance. Zhao Zongheng looks at Su Yongde with a little curiosity. "The Emperor, this heart is called Shuemengyang. It is soft and glutinous and delicious. It was made by the Empress herself." Su Yongde deliberately accentuated the second half of the sentence, and secretly looked at the Emperor's face. Remember to eat dumplings on the winter solstice. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. What is Empress Youth? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors.